Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Zoo School Live. My name is Laura, and today we have two very special animal friends with us. They are the same species, but two different individuals. This here is Jackie on our tree here. She is one of our ambassador animals. And behind us is Emerald, and she actually lives on exhibit in the Wildlife Lodge. And these two animals are a special type of lizard called a Prehensile-tailed skink, or a Solomon's Island skink. And they get that name because of their really awesome adaptations. You can kind of see on Emerald there that long tail coming out the back, wrapped a little bit around that log. And Jackie also has the same type of long tail. They also are often called the monkey-tailed skink. This tail is very, very helpful because this particular species of reptile is what we call arboreal. That means they live in trees. Now we have Jackie set up here with a nice little snack as well. We have some pothos here. This is a plant that many people actually keep in their homes, and it is toxic to most animals, but not to our prehensile-tailed skinks. So Emerald and Jackie both got some of this. Maybe they'll munch on it throughout the time. Now, they are often also called the Solomon's Island skink because that's where they're from. So I do have a map in case you're not a world traveler and super familiar. The Solomon's Island are located just a little bit north of Australia, so in the Pacific Ocean. And this type of lizard is found pretty much only in that area. So they are very, very well adapted for the habitat on the Solomon's Islands, which is a rainforest. So that long tail is extremely helpful in gripping and grabbing. And you can also see that Jackie and Emerald have really sharp claws and really long toes. You can actually see her kind of gripping the branch and holding on with those long toes. So this is really important when you're an animal that's climbing and grabbing, scaling trees and different types of textures. So it is a special way that they're able to get around up in those trees. If you take a look at their coloration too, so Jackie has a little bit more of a yellow color, but she does have some green and brown in there, whereas Emerald is more of that bright green, hence the name Emerald. This coloration helps them to camouflage. So they are very good at hiding up in those treetops. And that's going to be important because this particular animal can be hunted by other animals. So they have to watch out for predators such as larger snakes, birds of prey, and some types of mammals. So that camouflage is really beneficial when they're climbing around in those leaves and those treetops to help them to hide. And this is a pretty normal coloration for the Solomon's Island or the Prehensile-tailed skink. Now that tail, aside from being super long, we call it prehensile because it actually can grip and grab. So you can see that Emerald has it kind of relaxed and wrapped along that log. She's not actively climbing right now, but if she were to climb up into those branches, she can use it to wrap around things and act almost like an extra hand. And again, that's super important. If you spend most of your life in the treetops, you're going to want to have as good of a grip as possible. So to go along with those long, sharp claws and long toes, that tail wraps around things. You can kind of see that really well on our friend Jackie. Her tail is actually kind of holding on to the plant down here. It's looped around and wrapped on. Now, like other lizards, they are covered in scales. Their scales are a little bit smoother because they do live in a very damp, very humid, very wet environment. Many times we see scales on lizards that are very rough if they're from more of a dry and desert area. Prehensile-tailed skinks are going to be found in the tropics. So they like it very wet and humid. They're going to live in a place where there's rain pretty frequently. And that's really important for their survival because if they live in the trees, they're not necessarily going down to get drinks from the water very often. So they'll often get their water from the raindrops on the leaves. And we'll see here if Jackie wants to have some of that pothos. So this is a special treat. Here at the zoo, our prehensile-tailed skinks do eat different types of salad material. So she gets lettuces and greens, she gets fruits and other veggies. They are pretty much the only species of skink that is herbivorous. So that means they do only eat plants. Now they might accidentally eat a few bugs here and there as they are eating those different plants, but for the most part they're gonna eat different leaves, different buds and flowers, things like that, which is, again, a pretty fitting thing for them to munch on when they are hanging out in the tops of trees. You might notice Jackie stick her tongue out a little bit. They do kind of taste and smell with that tongue, so she might use it to investigate the plant material and figure out, is this something I want to eat or is this not? And again, this type of plant, pothos, is not something that we often feed our animals because it is toxic. But prehensile-tailed skinks are known to eat quite a few toxic types of plants and not seem to be bothered by it, which is really cool. Now, I mentioned they are a skink. A skink is just a special term for a group of lizards, and we usually categorize these lizards as having a very big head. So you can see Jackie's head is pretty thick, pretty wide, and then her body is pretty flat and wide as well. Now, her tail is at least the length, if not more than her body, but that's not the case necessarily for every skink. But they're usually categorized as having a thick head, a thick body, and then smaller, shorter legs. So they're not the fastest lizards out there, but they are, again, very well adapted for their arboreal or treetop habitat. Now, one really cool thing that sets them apart, aside from being herbivores, is that they do actually, they're the largest type of skink that you'll find, and they do actually have live birth most of the time. Now, when we think of reptiles, we're often thinking about them laying eggs, but some species of reptiles can give a sort of live birth. And the word we use for this is ovoviviparous. It's a real mouthful. And essentially what it means is that inside Jackie's body or Emerald's body, if they were to have young, they would develop eggs. Those eggs would essentially hatch on the inside and the baby would come out alive and hatched out already. Now, this means they usually have less offspring. So they have 1 to 2 babies at most usually, and they might not reproduce every single year. The other really neat thing is that they are social animals, whereas many reptile species don't necessarily hang out in groups. Prehensile-tailed skinks will stay in family groups. So sometimes when the babies are born, they'll stay with their mom and their dad or their siblings for their entire life, and they'll all kind of hang out in the same habitat, which is really cool. Now, our 2 skinks do live separately, and they're okay with that, and that's mostly because Emerald, who we're going to pop over and take a look at, she is on exhibit. So she lives in our wildlife lodge that you guys can come and visit while the zoo is open, and she's on display every day for guests to take a look at. She actually came to us in January of 2020, so she's only been here for about a year, but she is over 20 years old. We believe she's about 21, and she came to us from the Academy of Natural Sciences down in Philadelphia. So if you guys tuned into Tango's Zoo School Live, Emerald came to us from the same place, and we were very, very excited to have her. So in the Wildlife Lodge, she greets lots and lots of guests and helps people to learn about them, which is very important because this species is facing some conservation threats. Now, because they live in a very small area of the world, they're very high at risk for habitat loss. And the Solomon Islands are generally a forested area. There's lots of rainforest, but because humans would like to continue to develop the area, they have deforested or cut down a lot of that space. And if you're an animal that 1, lives in only one type of forest or one type of location, and 2, you live on an island, your options for leaving and finding a new place to live are very, very slim. So unfortunately, they do have some pretty big problems when it comes to losing their natural habitat. The other big thing that affects them the most is the pet trade. We talk about this a lot when we're mentioning different species of reptiles. These are a really cool looking animal. They are beautiful in color, they crawl around, they're actually very active at certain times of the day, and so sometimes people want to bring these animals home. And the problem with that usually is that those animals are taken out of their wild habitat, and that is never a good thing for the wild populations, and it's usually not a good thing for the individual either because they're not well adapted or accustomed to living in human care. Jackie actually came to us from the Philadelphia Zoo years and years ago. She's about 20 years old as well, and both of these skinks we believe were born in a zoo setting, so they did not come from the wild, but the pet trade is a big factor for their population risk. Now, we don't really know how many of them are left because they are really hard to find. Remember, we talked about that beautiful camouflage, and they aren't the fastest moving animal out there, and they're what we call crepuscular. So that means that they are the most active at dusk and dawn. So the best time to see them out and about is usually right around daybreak and right around the sunset. So that can be a tricky time to find a lizard, especially in a very tall tree. So I have a few snacks here we can try with Jackie. She was very interested in this, but she seems to be struggling to figure out how to eat it. Maybe I can give her a hand here. And you'll see again, she has that big tongue that sticks out. They do actually have nostrils as well, and you can even see on the side of her head, she has these little holes, and those are her ears. So lizards can hear pretty well. They're also gonna feel a lot of vibrations. We're gonna see if she can figure out how to turn around. Very graceful, Jackie. Awesome demonstration of that beautiful climbing ability. In her habitat here at the zoo, Jackie has lots of little places she can climb and hide. So we do try to replicate her natural habitat for her here at the zoo. Like I said, we do feed her some fruits and vegetables. So I have some lettuce here today, some greens. See if she's interested in any of that. Yeah, there we go. I mean, this is first class service for her. Just food comes right to her mouth. So she does not eat every day like other reptiles. She has a pretty slow metabolism. So she is going to eat usually every other day or so. And inside of that mouth, even though she does eat plants, she has extremely sharp teeth. And that's to help her to grip and grab and smush down that food. So you might even hear her chomp a little. So she was eating some pepper. It looked like a little bit of squash. I have some fruit here for her. I'm gonna see if I can get a better handle on it. So this is some cantaloupe. So normally she actually comes down and eats her food on her own. We don't necessarily tongue feed her, but it is something that we like to do because it's pretty fun to watch her eat. So they would spend, like I said, the primary main daytime hours just kind of resting and relaxing, and then at dusk and dawn, they would head out to try to find food. They'll eat leaves and buds and flowers. Good job, Jackie. So while we're watching Jackie eat, I want to remind everyone, as usual, if you have any questions, anything you'd like to know about Jackie or Emerald, our prehensile-tailed skinks, please put them in the comments now so that we can go through in a few minutes and try to answer them for you. Again, if you end up catching this later on and you didn't have a chance to watch it live, feel free, still put those comments in there. We will try to answer them at a later time. Jackie is really enjoying this salad today. I think she's this species is one of the coolest ones to talk about because they just really are so unique. And they do have little personalities. So Jackie, we do have to wear protective gloves and we feed with tongs just because she does have some claws and some sharp teeth. And this is not a species that you often see out and about. We got a few more pieces. We got some pepper here. See if she likes some of that.
All right, it looks like we do have someone that said that we missed the beginning. What type of lizard is this?
Oh, yes. So if you're just joining us, this is Jackie, and Jackie is a prehensile-tailed skink. They're also known as the Solomon's Island skink or the monkey-tailed skink. And that is because they have an amazing long tail that helps them to hold on to branches and helps them to climb. So Jackie is sitting on this tree right here because in the wild they are arboreal, so they are found living in the treetops. And she is enjoying some snacks. This particular species of skink is what we call herbivorous. So they eat mostly plants. We're gonna see, maybe she wants some of this pothos. I don't know if she's so sure about it. That's okay. She said, I want my fresh salad, please. That's about it. That's okay. One more little piece here, Jackie. All right. Do you have any other questions about Jackie or Emerald today?
Doesn't look like we have any.
Well, like always, guys, we'll hang out another minute or so. It looks like Jackie finally wants to give the pothos a try. If you think of anything, please do put those in the comments. We love answering your questions. It's one of our favorite parts about Zoo School Live. And we love sharing our animals. So thank you guys again for tuning in. If you miss any of our episodes and you'd like to watch them, or if you just want to re-watch any of the old ones, you can find them on our Facebook page as well as on YouTube in our Zoo School Live listings. We will be continuing Zoo School through the spring. So if you guys really enjoy hanging out with us, please let us know that. And we'll be meeting a lot more of our cool exhibit animals and ambassador animals throughout. There you go, Jackie. Jackie's doing a great job of trying new things today. You can see that nice pink tongue. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us. Thanks for having a little snack time with Jackie and for learning all about Emerald, our exhibit Prehensile-tailed skink. If you guys want to see her in person, she is out in the Wildlife Lodge, which is open pretty much every day. And the zoo will be back to being open 7 days a week starting next week. So please come out and visit us and see some of our animal friends in person for yourself. I hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday, and we will see you guys again on Tuesday at 11 a.m. for our next episode of Zoo School Live.